There is a question I have been asked more times than almost any other, and it almost always arrives with a note of frustration underneath it. Doctor, I eat well. I have always eaten well. So why am I getting weaker? For a long time, the honest answer from medicine was a shrug. That muscle simply fades with age, and there is little to be done. That answer is out of date. We now understand something about the aging body that changes the entire picture. And once you understand it, you will see exactly why a person can eat carefully, eat plenty, eat what any doctor would call a good diet, and still lose muscle year after year without ever knowing why. It is not about how much you eat. I want to be very clear about that from the start. Most people over 60 who are losing strength are eating enough food. The problem is something else entirely, and there is a specific number involved. A number that almost nobody over 60 has ever been told, that determines whether the protein on your plate ever reaches your muscle at all. I am going to give you that number in a few minutes. But the number will not make sense until you understand the problem it solves. So let me start here. When you eat protein, an egg, a piece of fish, a glass of milk, your body breaks it into amino acids. Those travel through your bloodstream. And when there is a question I have been asked more times than almost any other, and it almost always arrives with a note of frustration underneath it. Doctor, I eat well. I have always eaten well. So why am I getting weaker? For a long time, the honest answer from medicine was a shrug. That muscle simply fades with age, and there is little to be done. That answer is out of date. We now understand something about the aging body that changes the entire picture. And once you understand it, you will see exactly why a person can eat carefully, eat plenty, eat what any doctor would call a good diet, and still lose muscle year after year without ever knowing why. It is not about how much you eat. I want to be very clear about that from the start. Most people over 60 who are losing strength are eating enough food. The problem is something else entirely, and there is a specific number involved. A number that almost nobody over 60 has ever been told, that determines whether the protein on your plate ever reaches your muscle at all. I am going to give you that number in a few minutes. But the number will not make sense until you understand the problem it solves. So let me start here. When you eat protein, an egg, a piece of fish, a glass of milk, your body breaks it into amino acids. Those travel through your bloodstream, and when enough arrive at your muscle tissue, something switches on. Your muscle begins to rebuild itself. This happens every day of your life. Your muscle is torn down and rebuilt in a slow, continuous cycle. When rebuilding keeps pace, you hold your strength. When it falls behind, you lose it. Quietly, a little at a time. At 30, that switch is extremely sensitive. A modest amount of protein flips it on without difficulty. At 70, it does not. Researchers have a name for this. They call it anabolic resistance. And it is one of the... There is a question I have been asked more times than almost any other. And it almost always arrives with a note of frustration underneath it. Doctor, I eat well. I have always eaten well. So why am I getting weaker? For a long time, the honest answer from medicine was a shrug. That muscle simply fades with age, and there is little to be done. That answer is out of date. We now understand something about the aging body that changes the entire picture. And once you understand it, you will see exactly why a person can eat carefully, eat plenty, eat what any doctor would call a good diet, and still lose muscle year after year without ever knowing why. It is not about how much you eat. I want to be very clear about that from the start. Most people over 60 who are losing strength are eating enough food. The problem is something else entirely, and there is a specific number involved. A number that almost nobody over 60 has ever been told, that determines whether the protein on your plate ever reaches your muscle at all. I am going to give you that number in a few minutes, but the number will not make sense until you understand the problem it solves. So let me start here. When you eat protein, an egg, a piece of fish, a glass of milk, your body breaks it into amino acids. Those travel through your bloodstream, and when enough arrive at your muscle tissue, something switches on. Your muscle begins to rebuild itself. This happens every day of your life. Your muscle is torn down and rebuilt in a slow, continuous cycle. When rebuilding keeps pace, you hold your strength. When it falls behind, you lose it. Quietly, a little at a time. At 30, that switch is extremely sensitive. A modest amount of protein flips it on without difficulty. At 70, it does not. Researchers have a name for this. They call it anabolic resistance, and it is one of the most studied findings in aging research over the last 20 years. It means your muscle has become harder to convince. The same meal that would have triggered repair at 40 now sends a signal too faint to register. The amino acids arrive. Your muscle does not respond the way it once did. Nothing is broken. You are not ill. This is normal aging tissue behaving exactly as aging tissue behaves. But here is what it means in practice. It means your muscle now works on a threshold, not a total. A threshold. Below a certain amount of protein at a single sitting, the response is weak. The protein is not wasted. Your body uses it for other purposes, and it will convert some of it to energy, but very little of it goes toward protecting your muscle. Above that amount, the response is strong, and repair begins in earnest. So the question is no longer only how much protein you ate today. The question is how many times today you cross the threshold. And that brings me to the number. In 2013, an international group of researchers called the ProtAge Study Group published a position paper on protein for older people. Their conclusion was that adults our age need somewhere between 25 and 30 grams of protein in a single meal to reliably trigger the repair response. A meal carrying roughly 2.5 to 3 grams of an amino acid called leucine, which is the specific trigger. That is the flaw. And I want to be straight with you. A good deal of research published since then suggests the real figure may be higher, closer to 35 or even 40 grams for people in their 70s. The experts have not fully settled this. So treat 25 to 30 grams as your minimum, not your target. Below it, you are almost certainly getting very little back. Now hold that number in your mind, and let me show you what an ordinary American day looks like against it. I am not inventing these figures. The Department of Agriculture measures what Americans actually eat in a national survey year after year. Here is what it shows. Breakfast, toast, cereal, coffee, juice. Protein, around 10 grams. For adults over 70, the surveys put it near 11, well below the threshold. Lunch, a sandwich, some soup, a salad with a little cheese, around 15 grams. Closer, still below. Dinner, the real meal, a chicken or fish or beef, a proper portion. 40, 50 grams, far above the threshold. Add that day together and it looks respectable. 75, 80 grams of protein. Any nutrition chart would call that adequate. Nationally, adults eat roughly 3 times as much protein at dinner as they do at breakfast. But count the threshold crossings. 1, the whole day. 1, that person spent breakfast and lunch, 2/3 of their waking hours, with the repair signal barely registering. And the large amount of protein at dinner does not make up for it, because your body has no storage system for amino acids. What you cannot use in that window is used for something else. So you have a person eating what looks like a perfectly good diet, getting 1 strong repair signal a day, and slowly, quietly losing ground. That is the answer to the question I opened with. Now, I want to be honest with you about the state of this evidence, because you deserve that more than you deserve a confident story. Not every study agrees. In one 8-week controlled trial, evening out the protein made no measurable difference in muscle or strength. Other research points the other way. A large national survey of grip strength in adults over 51 found that people crossing that 25-gram mark at 2 or 3 meals were stronger than those crossing it once. So this is not settled science. And anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. What I can tell you is this: the change costs nothing, asks you to eat no more food than you already eat, and for a person with healthy kidneys, carries essentially no risk. That is a reasonable bet at our age. So let me tell you exactly how to make it. I said there was one meal doing the most damage. It is breakfast. Breakfast is the weakest protein meal of the day for the overwhelming majority of older adults in this country. And it is also the meal where the fix is easiest. Toast, cereal, fruit, coffee, juice. Every one of those is a fine food. Not one of them carries meaningful protein. And breakfast matters more than the others for a reason that is easy to overlook. By the time you sit down to it, you have gone 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours without any protein at all. Overnight, your body has been in a breakdown state. That is completely normal. It happens to everyone. But it means breakfast is your first opportunity in half a day to switch repair back on. If breakfast carries 10 grams of protein, you do not switch it on. You extend the breakdown state into the middle of the afternoon. So what does 30 grams look like on a plate? These figures come from the Department of Agriculture's food database. 1 large egg, about 6 grams. So 2 eggs, 12. Good, but on their own, not enough. A cup of plain Greek yogurt, 17 to 20. Cottage cheese, similar. An 8-ounce glass of milk, 8. A small tin of sardines, 21. A palm-sized piece of fish or chicken, 25 to 30. A cup of cooked lentils or beans, around 18. You start to see how it comes together. 2 eggs, a glass of milk, a piece of cheese, or Greek yogurt with a handful of nuts, or last night's fish warmed up. There is no rule that breakfast has to look like breakfast. None of that is exotic or expensive, and none of it requires you to eat more food overall. You are moving protein from dinner, where you are already past the threshold, to breakfast and lunch, where you are not. Same food, same day, different arrangement. Now I want to tell you about the second thing. And honestly, The evidence for this one is considerably stronger than for anything I have said so far. There is something you can do that costs nothing, takes almost no time, and makes every gram of protein you eat work harder. It does not involve a gym or equipment or anything you have to buy. I will come back to it in a moment, because first I have to give a warning that applies to a specific group of people watching this. If you have been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, or if any doctor has ever told you to limit your protein, do not increase your protein based on this video. That advice was given to you for a reason. Kidney guidelines for people with reduced function often set protein well below the ordinary recommendation, and the amount is calibrated to your individual kidney function. Talk to the physician or the dietitian who manages it before you change anything at all. For everyone else, and that is the large majority of people over 60, reviews of the research consistently find that in adults with healthy kidneys, higher protein intake does not damage kidney function. The concern among researchers in this field is not that older adults eat too much protein. It is that many eat too little, and one correction on the daily total. The official recommended intake was defined as the minimum required to prevent deficiency, never as the amount that keeps an older adult strong. Both the PROT age group and the European Clinical Nutrition Society concluded that healthy adults over 65 do better on more. For a person of around 155 pounds, that works out to roughly 70 to 85 grams a day. Now, the thing I promised you, movement, specifically muscle contraction, using the muscle, putting a load on it, asking